Hello, hello. Welcome everyone. I see we've already got some questions going. That's amazing. So I'll keep it brief and just introduce myself shortly. My name is Maya. I'm one of the co-founders of Quirk. My co-founder, Allie, is making her way on here, but having some troubles right now. So hopefully we will get her in as quickly as possible. So again, I am one of the co-founders of Quirk. Quirk is a nonprofit organization that is centered around empowering those who are part of the OCD community and struggling. We provide a lot of supportive resources. We run support groups weekly for both those who have firsthand lived experience as well as supporters and loved ones, which is a pretty unique thing. So apart from that, we are doing a lot of stuff online. We're doing a lot of advocacy work on social media. So find us on Instagram and Facebook. Our handle is @hardquirk. And yeah, so I am ready to jump in on some questions. I will bring one up here. So from Paul, why do these SOCD thoughts feel so real? Yeah, OCD thoughts can feel so real regardless of what theme you're experiencing. I'm not positive of the acronym SOCD. I'm assuming somatic, but I could be wrong there. Definitely let me know if I have that correct. But yeah, OCD thoughts can feel extremely real regardless of what subtype you're experiencing. And why? I'm really not sure how to get into the why. Our OCD really knows how to attack the things that we value most. And that can bring just such real anxiety. And specifically for those who are struggling with somatic OCD and somatic symptoms, again, if I have that correct here, that is something that is an experience in our bodies that our minds are hyper-focusing on. And when it's a somatic kind of situation, whether or not we're actually experiencing that thing, that sensation, for a lot of people, somatic OCD can be like the sensation of blinking, and whether you're blinking enough or you can't stop paying attention to your blinking, or swallowing, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know exactly why that is, but yeah, it's definitely a very distressing experience to be going through. And when it's something that is so real, like your physical experience and being in your body, that's incredibly distressing. Let's move on to another. And again, if Allie has any thoughts to add on there, we can definitely bring her back for that. From Emma, do you have any ideas on how to help me with my OCD? I live in a location that is not susceptible to therapy from NoCD, and I was wondering if you know of any other places I could go online. Oh, wow. I am so sorry that you're experiencing that. Unfortunately, we know that treatment for OCD can be very limited. And if you're in a location that doesn't, you can't access NoCD, that is one of the kind of more accessible ways to get therapy. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. And I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. I mean, right off the bat, Quirk, we are a resource that is out there for you. We run support groups, like I said earlier, that are 100% free. We like to keep all of our services as accessible as we possibly can for people who are in your situation and others. So we run support groups, and those are weekly, but we run 2 groups that alternate weeks. So this week on Thursday, I believe that is September 2nd. So we have our firsthand group. So those who are living with OCD firsthand can join that group. We run them through Zoom. So they are online right now. And again, completely free. We have a whole bunch of people who are experiencing OCD firsthand who come and join us and get to just talk about what they're going through and get support from others who are experiencing the same thing. And it's a really unique space that we like to keep it lighthearted and also balancing the really tough stuff and encouraging people to do the hard things and being there together to support one another through doing those things. Beyond hard quirk, what do you think? I mean, I'm not positive where you're at, but there are plenty of resources on social media, different advocates who are out there. And if you check out who is connected with OCD on social media, as well as hard quirk, you'll find many of those other advocates and treatment centers. And let me see, I've got Allie. I'm going to add her real quick. There we go.
Hello. How is everyone?
We're doing all right. We got lots of questions already. So
yes, all of my apologies. I ran into some unexpected scheduling snafus, so appreciate your patience for me being late. But I really wanted to be here, especially because it's our last webinar, and we have had just the most amazing time. Like truly, we have learned so much from all of you. So yeah, absolutely. I don't know which question you were on, Maya. I don't want to interrupt you.
Can you see the one that's up right now?
Oh yeah, I can. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Cool. So yeah, I was just answering this. I talked a bit about hard quirk and our support groups that we have available. I forgot to mention that we also have an online space on our website, which is www.hardquirk.com under the forums. That's a space that is accessible anytime. It doesn't need to be scheduled like the support groups. You can go in and write anything that, any questions that you have or something that you might want some support around. Yeah, anything like that, you can always go in there, and we have people from our community who always go in and kind of respond to those things. Allie, did you have any other resources in mind?
No, I mean, of course, I'm sure Maya already covered this. We're not therapists. So at this point, we can provide so many peer resources, which is like our ultimate goal. But also just like I'm a huge advocate of having a great care team to surround and support you, especially if you're in a place in your treatment where this is like still feeling fairly new and really overwhelming. Because I always want to make sure that you have like a myriad of support. I almost think of it as like it takes a village, like truly. So having both professional and then like peer-based support, I think can be really helpful.
The other resource that comes to mind is Kimberly Quinlan, who is definitely on social media. She has a program that is like the OCD school or something like that, which I believe is also accessible online. So if you're not able to access OCD services, that may be another route for you. And again, that's Kimberly Quinlan. I could definitely type that. She is great. She's so kind, she's great. Let me pull up another question while I'm writing that out. This one's from Jen. What words of hope can you offer to someone who is about to start therapy? Allie, I'll let you get a head start.
Wow. I mean, okay, wish I knew the answers. Like a lot of pressure. Like, what are the words of hope? But, I think the first thing that comes to mind is like, at least for me, by the time I was going to enter therapy or treatment, the worst was behind me. So the most acute suffering that I went through was before I went into therapy, which is very counterintuitive, as most things with OCD are. But I think it's very interesting that OCD will sort of have you believe that it's keeping you safe, that it's keeping you from being overly anxious, it's keeping you from losing control, when the reality is like it's kind of just keeping you sick. So I think by the time you get into treatment and into therapy, you're at this place where you're realizing like, well, I'm going to be super anxious whether I'm engaging with these obsessions or not. So what's going to actually get me better in the long term? So yeah, I mean, I hope that provides like some sense of hopefulness. Like it doesn't really decrease any of the distress about, anticipatory anxiety about going into treatment. But the reality is that like if you're at this place where you're about to start therapy, ERP is really challenging and you're kind of in the right place for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know that this kind of information gets thrown around a lot, and it can kind of feel intimidating to hear, but a lot of people say that, OCD is a chronic condition. And when you are someone who is starting therapy, that can feel really intimidating of like, if I'm going to have this for the rest of my life to some degree, like, that just can provoke a lot of hopelessness. But I know Allie and I can definitely speak to this, as well as several others in the OCD community, that symptoms can definitely decrease. Things can get easier for sure. I have personally seen a reduction in my symptoms and have found a lot of relief, but that came through therapy and doing exposure and response prevention and embracing all of the discomfort that comes with the whole therapeutic process for OCD. So yes, there is definitely hope, even though OCD is known as a chronic condition. What other pieces
I
of
was
hope?
just like browsing the comments while you were talking. So it's like, okay, what questions did I miss? And wow, yeah, we have so many questions. It's so exciting.
So many, indeed. All right, let's get to another one.
Okay.
All right. My obsession fear is developing DID, or multiple personality disorder, now,
Yes.
and my mind is trying to convince me I have it, and I'm so scared. This started because 3 days ago my mom brought up this disorder. Yeah, it is definitely a common experience for those of us who struggle with OCD, for our OCD to attach to other mental health conditions, and this experience is definitely relatable. I've personally dealt with this specific obsession too. And yeah, isn't that amazing how OCD just like, here's one thing and it's like, oh, I'm going to attach to this now.
Amazing is a word. That's a word for it.
I mean,
No, but
there are
right.
many other horrible words I could use to describe
You're
it.
absolutely right. Like it's kind of, I don't know, like exquisite or very sophisticated, this system of thinking that OCD can develop. And I think like it's okay to be able to objectively acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you, Maya, I have had definitely like dissociative identity disorder, which I think like kind of almost starts to like merge in with false memory OCD, or like just that experience or fear of not remembering things accurately, or not being able to trust my mental health, or feeling like I might become detached from reality. So like things like schizophrenia. For a while, I really struggled with the idea of being like of dissociating, which is actually a fairly common symptom within like my experience of OCD and others as well. So kind of got an opportunity to like be exposed to that in real time, which is great. So yeah, I mean, first things first, like you're not alone. This is actually a very common symptom, and it makes a lot of sense because OCD is going to attack your sort of feelings of security, feelings of wanting to be able to trust yourself. um, I also think of it as just a form of health anxiety. So, health anxiety is a very common subtype, and this is essentially mental health anxiety.
Mhm. Absolutely. Let's get to another. Oh, wait, I already did that one. Yikes. Messing up here. So from Elizabeth, I just started with an OCD therapist. She's great, but I'm super worried she's going to make me do stuff that's actually offensive to others. My fear. Any thoughts? I mean, maybe.
I'm
It
just
is.
thinking about you shouting obscenities out your car window. And I'm just
Yeah,
like,
I've definitely done things that are actually offensive, but that
well,
was also slightly like self-directed in a way. I was like, I have to make ERP
totally.
fun somehow.
Yeah. And
So
also,
let's just get absolutely absurd with it.
yeah, I mean, that's something like, yeah, that's a very common thing, and something that I've heard a behavior therapist that works at like one of the common treatment facilities, which is at the OCDI at McLean Hospital. Her name is Carol Havia, and she will say things about like taking it to the point of absurdity, because it's like almost being able to diffuse from your thoughts in that way, and being able to acknowledge like how rationally like you understand that those things feel slash are really silly. I think it's also just another way of saying like embracing your quirkiness in recovery, right? So like we know that ERPs can be really weird, but being able to sort of lean into what comes with that and the discomfort, the risk that you might be offending people, and recognizing that at the beginning of treatment, they may really be wanting you to chase your values intensely. And then that may balance out a little bit later, right? Like you may not be like swearing at people forever, but in the beginning, that might be a really important way to quickly retrain your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would also like, I don't know how, but like doing your best to like steer away from like deciding before you even do an exposure whether or not that is offensive, and kind of making your decision beforehand. Keeping yourself open to all the possibilities that ERP offers is really going to help to open up like your ability to experience all of the emotions and do it as fully as possible, and really just like experiencing the entire spectrum. Um, which is what OCD does not want us to do, right? Like it wants things to go a very certain way and for you to steer away from these things completely. And assuming that, life has gotten a bit more limited because of OCD, like, do you really want to keep going in that sort of direction? So any step that you can make to step out of that and step into the discomfort and the possibility of being offensive to others, that's the route that's going to lead you closer to recovery. I just always feel bad saying these things because I'm like, it's all so tough, and we definitely understand that firsthand.
Yeah, and I mean, we never ever want to pretend like it's not horrible,
Right. Yeah.
and like it's not unfair that you have to do these really challenging things. You have to do these things that are a part of what is notoriously an extremely difficult therapeutic intervention, exposure and response prevention, or ERP. Like it is notoriously difficult for people to do. Um, and it's totally unfair that we often have to do those things to be able to do the things in life that we really want to do, or to be able to go after our values. And like, you'll never hear us saying that that's not true. It's just that focusing on that is often not the most effective tool. So being able to acknowledge, like, yeah, like this is really challenging for me. And I'm going to really put my focus and energy into accepting what is in this moment and engaging fully with this ERP.
Mhm. All right, let's go to another one. This one's from Linda. I used to take Effexor and Celexa, which are two different SSRIs. I believe I have that correct. Would you know what it is about these medicines that seem to lessen my need to hand wash? Not being a clinician or a psychiatrist or having any deep knowledge of how these medications exactly work, we do see it time and time again that medications, although not a cure-all, can really take the edge off of symptoms and experiencing OCD. So yeah, again, not knowing exactly what it is about that makes that work. It is definitely a lot of people's experience that it can kind of quiet down the noise of the thoughts and the like compulsive, I guess, compulsive thoughts, like that
Yeah.
drive to need to engage in a ritual.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like Maya said, I'm like the furthest from a psychiatrist. I really know nothing. I know that SSRIs are like the first line of defense, the first line
Right.
of defense often for like acute OCD. So that's like not an uncommon form of treatment for OCD. I really don't know anything about the details of what makes it work, but I'm glad that it's helpful. And I am glad that it helps to, like, as Maya said, sort of like turn down the volume of those intrusive thoughts.
Mhm.
I'm glad it was effective for you in the past.
Yeah. A quick one that does false memory ever get better? Um, yes, I truly believe that it can. I personally actually don't struggle with this subtype that I have. It's been sprinkled here and there, but it's not one of my primary kind of themes. But I think it's true for any kind of subtype of OCD that you're experiencing that these things can get better. Allie, do you have anything to add there? That's like the
Yeah.
extent of my thoughts.
No, I mean, I think like I've I also haven't really struggled specifically with, well, actually, I might have, but I haven't really ever like done ERP specifically around false memory OCD or like symptoms in that category. But we have, several close friends or like fellow advocates in the community who have absolutely struggled with that. And as Maya was saying, like just to sort of echo, like just like all subtypes of OCD, like it's not always going to be this hard. It doesn't have to always be this hard.
Trying to find another one.
I know, it's like scrolling through. I was like, oh, there's so many great conversations
There
in here.
are. I know some of these are like comments I'm like sifting through. Kind of related. Did you ever take medication for OCD and did it help? I have definitely taken medication for my OCD. It has definitely been a helpful addition to my kind of scope of treatment. Yeah, I've always, since I started struggling and receiving therapy and treatment in general, I have been taking SSRIs, have tried some other medications as well as adjuncts, and they have always definitely been helpful for me. I will say that sometimes I don't notice all that they do for me until those moments where I don't take them for several days in a row, and then I start taking them again, and I'm like, oh, wow. Like,
Surprise!
it really does, like we said earlier, like turn down the volume a bit, or at least in my experience it has. Although definitely not a cure-all, there's still a lot of behavioral work to be done on my part in kind of embracing these things that I've been avoiding due to OCD. But medication definitely has turned on the volume of intrusive thoughts for sure and made the need to ritualize less intense.
Yeah, I mean, I say this as a person who's like myself quite notorious for struggling with medications. I like actually one of my core obsessions with OCD is around medications and their effects. So I self-identified for a while as a person who just like didn't want to take medication and just like was fine with like doing behavioral interventions, which I think was actually like all making excuses for my OCD and my fears and anxiety and things like that. Um, and now I can say, as a person who is actively like on medication, I would not be well without it. That's not always true for people with OCD, but it often is. It often is very even like medically necessary, particularly thinking about the neurobiological component of OCD, which it sounds like I know more about than I actually do. But we understand that like there are absolutely chemical things that are happening in the brain that contribute to OCD. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can even like find OCD symptoms now on a CAT scan, which is really interesting.
I
So
didn't know
there's
about
like
that.
some really like distinct neurological experiences, which sort of further reinforces like the necessity of medication. And I think a lot of my journey was feeling that the medication was going to change or alter things or sort of like just make things feel more out of control. And I think the reality is that the medication like allows me and empowers me to be my actual self instead of how my OCD would prefer me, which is quiet and scared part. So
Yeah.
I have big thoughts on medication as a person. I mean, I'm in this ongoing battle, and it's definitely something that every person has to consider and make the choice for themselves with the help of a psychiatrist and a medical professional. But for me, it is an absolutely necessary part of my treatment and continued recovery.
Mm-hmm. I totally lost my place.
Oh, I know. Sometimes like you'll be scrolling,
I know.
and then it's like,
oh,
but
here's
it's cool
the
because
second.
then I get to like read all
Yeah,
of your
you can see all.
comments and know what's going on.
For sure. This one is also from Anonymous. Also, is anger part of severe OCD? Specifically, like as a symptom of it, I have no knowledge, cannot speak to that. But I think anger can definitely be a result of experiencing something that other people don't understand and experiencing something that has treatment that requires you to do all the things that you don't want to do. So I think anger totally makes sense in this situation. I have personally definitely felt a lot of anger as part of my journey, of like anger at myself, at my brain. Like, why does my brain profusely have to do X, Y, and Z when whatever? It can take up a lot of your time and can really attack your values. So I think anger definitely makes a lot of sense there. And I think you can definitely give yourself some self compassion in that. It does make sense that anger would show up in this kind of situation when you're really suffering, honestly.
Yeah. Ditto.
Okay, ditto. All right. Um,
I was curious. I was scrolling through the comments, and it sounded like some people were having a conversation a little bit about homosexuality
I
OCD,
just saw
or what's
that.
more
Yeah.
commonly known as sexual orientation OCD. I don't know, Maya. Did you already talk about that? Am I just like not? I just wasn't here.
There was like the first question that I attacked was about SOCD, and I was not positive about the use of that acronym, whether it was somatic OCD or what. But I'm seeing this now from Paul that it was about HOCD. So yeah, this is definitely a large topic that Allie, I'm happy for you to get into if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hot topic
It
right
is.
now because, as you say, HOCD can be portrayed as offensive to the LGBTQ community. I'd like to start off by saying that Maya and I are both members of the LGBTQ community. So, really, no offense on my part. Like, we haven't experienced any offense taken, and something we talk a lot about in support groups, in our events. We had a lot of events that we hosted during Pride Month as well. And something we really want to emphasize is that, like, we understand that much like pedophilia OCD or POCD, having those intrusive thoughts doesn't make you a pedophile, and having the fear of being homosexual does not make you a homophobe. We understand that OCD is really latching on to the experience of not knowing yourself, not being able to identify yourself. And interestingly enough, Maya and I are both queer, and we have both struggled consistently with sexual orientation OCD. So it's really not specific to like being straight or being fearful of being gay, because I myself have like struggled with the obsession of actually being straight, which threatens the integrity of like my current relationship. And I think that's like the really important piece that you want to highlight there is like OCD is going to be latching on to things that feel like they threaten the integrity of the things you care about the most. So if you're a person who really values intimacy, who really wants to be engaged in sexual or romantic relationships with people, like, yeah, OCD is going to grab right onto that. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my 2 cents on that.
Yes. Let's see. I'm just going to pull this up really quickly. Christine is saying HOCD is harm OCD. There is multiple uses of HOCD. We see it being harm OCD as well as homosexuality OCD, which again, homosexuality OCD is not necessarily the best term for it. We usually like to say sexual orientation OCD because some people's experience is the reverse way, like Allie was saying. Any thoughts on how to stop rumination? Oh,
I wish.
that's a rough one.
Well, okay, I guess that's not true because it's like I read this initially as any thoughts on how to stop intrusive thoughts, and I'm like, no.
Okay, yeah, no.
But now, okay, I'm like, I'm on board. So rumination is a choice, even though it feels sometimes like it's not a choice. It actually
It can be
is.
very automatic. Yeah.
It can be, yes, and it is engaging in a ritual. So for that, I have tips, but I'm gonna let you speak to that, Maya.
Definitely something that I have struggled with a lot as I experience OCD as more of like the pure O kind of OCD, where a lot of my rituals are mental compulsions. So rumination being like the number one compulsion that has me stuck for hours. How to stop it? I think the first step in stopping rumination is the ability to step back and like acknowledge that you are ruminating, which is a skill like anything else. So practicing when you do kind of find yourself spending so much time just like thinking and not actually doing anything besides like worrying in your mind and ruminating. When you notice yourself doing that, like take note of that. I think that can be the first step. You know, you might not be able to stop it right then and there, but building awareness is definitely a good first step. Um, and then I'd say next step would be like replacing um, rumination with some other values directed activity. You know, if you find yourself stuck in your mind, maybe doing something that is more hands on and engaging. If you're someone like me who enjoys art, that could be another route to just like change the direction of where your thoughts are going. Um, Allie, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you like mostly covered it. I mean, the like golden rule, I think, is just like that reshift, right? Being able
Mhm.
to acknowledge the thought, acknowledge the possibility, and then reshift. And you might have to do that like literally
Yes.
once a second, every second for that first few minutes. And it can feel really exhausting, or I think some like discouragement can sort of sneak in there, feeling like, oh, this isn't working. I can't do this. This is like, I'm not set up for this, or things like that, especially when you're already like triggered or anxious. So, this is a really great skill, kind of tied to mindfulness or the practice of mindfulness, to practice outside of times when you're really distressed. That way, when the time comes that you are super like peaking sides, you're ready and you're kind of like, okay, this is what I've trained for.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my like golden rule.
Mhm.
Maya, I noticed a question I was really intrigued by. I don't know if I can put it up, but I
Probably
wanted to.
can, but if not,
Okay, let me try. I'm going to pretend like
okay.
I can and we'll figure it out. Um, maybe. Nope, I cannot.
Okay.
I also lost the comment, so that's unfortunate.
Okay.
But
If you
um,
have like a
there's a
name or
few.
a
There's a
time that
few
it
great
was, all
ones.
right. We'll go to this one.
YouTube and resources, I noticed. Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
This is
all right.
Izzy.
Sorry. I already pulled this one up. Any advice on trying to keep up with schoolwork? I'm just going into my final year, and a depressive episode brought on by guilt over my OCD has left me so behind. Um, whew, yeah,
Relatable.
very relatable. I'm definitely in the same boat of feeling very behind because of um, both depression and OCD. So twinsies there. Um, yeah. Trying to keep up with schoolwork. I know for me, OCD has really actually latched on to schoolwork, and that I really struggle with writing a lot and like double thinking, just right experiences, perfectionism, you name it, like anything related to perfectionism really hinders my ability to get schoolwork done. And then that difficulty leads to just a practice of procrastination because I can feel so discouraged by all of that. So things that I've found to be helpful are definitely like making um, like a schedule for myself of like actually scheduling in time to do things because that way it kind of feels like a commitment. I at least mentally am like, yeah, I can't just like not do this because it's on my schedule. um, as well as like being really conscious when I am doing schoolwork that I'm going to do it with the intention of reducing rituals as much as I possibly can and being very intentional about how I'm doing this. If I notice myself getting stuck in rewriting things or just not writing anything at all, kind of noticing what that compulsion that I'm doing is. Um, so if I'm stuck in not writing anything at all, literally just like typing my name or like hitting the keyboard, just doing anything to get my hands moving. That's something that I've practiced a lot. Um, yeah. Allie, I know you're also in a similar situation in school. What's your experience of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of mine is like the like secondary, like emotional experience of just like having OCD, because I feel that there's like this really distinct like quote before and after, where like prior to OCD, I feel like I was a quote great student and these things came more naturally to me. And I feel really frustrated when I return to schoolwork and finding it to be unusually challenging. It's just really discouraging and I feel tired and frustrated. So for me, like the ritual tends to be like avoidance. So I think that itself is kind of a form of perfectionism. I'm like, well, if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not doing it at all. Although that's not really like a conscious thought process. That's just sort of like how it ends up happening. I know for me, like I had a treatment provider suggest actually making my self-directed ERP blocks of time be homework, or making homework be a part of my ERP. I haven't actually employed that yet, but I really, really like to, because I was like, wow, that's a brilliant idea that didn't even occur to me before. And I feel like anytime I have structured ERP or self-directed ERP time, I am like holding myself to a different standard of resisting rituals. So I'm like, okay, I'm going into this assignment knowing that like for the next hour, like I'm trying for 0% rituals. So I already know it's going to be uncomfortable. I already know I'm going to be anxious. And I think that there's something really dynamic about that idea. So I liked that a lot.
Sunny, why is OCD so exhausting?
I
I
don't
feel that. I feel that. I mean, I have some thoughts. I'm gathering them, but I mean, for a lot of us who are experiencing OCD, like it can range from like us spending hours in a day just doing compulsions or ruminating. Like we spend so much time um, like just struggling mentally with this, and of course that mental energy is just exhausted through that whole process, as well as if you have physical compulsions, like that itself can also be exhausting right there. But not to mention the emotional kind of drain of just OCD attacking your values and the things that you love and want to do, that can really develop a whole lot of discouragement. And I know for me that has definitely been exhausting as well. Alibel, how about you?
Oh, did my screen? Here we go. My screen was being funky for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes I'm like, why is everything so hard? It's so
Mhm.
frustrating. But then other times I'm like, okay, not gonna lie, there's something unbelievably sophisticated about how my brain makes associations, about how I function, thinking about the creativity. Like there's these really like wild traits that come with OCD that I'm like, yeah, I'm surprised I'm not more exhausted actually. That comes up a lot whenever like I will share like some random intrusive thought or obsession or something with like a loved one, and they're just like, wow, your brain is working so hard. And I'm like, wow, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. Like you have no idea how hard my brain is working. And so in those moments I'm very much like, yeah, it's exhausting. It's really tiring.
Definitely.
And Maya, just so you're aware too, I have to hop off in about 4 minutes. So
Okay.
I'm on like a somewhat limited time. I don't know if you want to do like a quick lightning round, or how
Yeah.
do you want to handle
Let's
that?
let's do it.
Awesome.
All right.
I
Also,
noticed the one that I was like really curious about,
oh,
which was, well, there's several actually.
okay. Go
Did you
for
already
it.
put one up on the screen?
No.
Okay. I noticed one of them, a couple of people were asking about scrupulosity OCD, or like blasphemy. So, like thinking of religious
Oh,
scrupulosity. So I figured we could maybe talk about that at some point. And then also someone asked if OCD was like genetic or hereditary.
okay. Struggling to find this.
Sorry.
It's
You pick
okay.
the comments you want. I'm sure we'll get to them.
All right. This is the closest one I can find related.
Yeah, absolutely. This was one of them, like right below it, somebody commented. So this is perfect.
Okay. Oh, here we go. All right.
Yeah.
So on the topic.
Yeah. I mean, scrupulosity OCD has been around forever. That's like one of the subtypes that I feel personally like really interested in, because there are like studies or, kind of historical writings that show that people have been experiencing scrupulosity for like hundreds of years. Like there are like people that were engaged in religious structures a very long time ago that were experiencing scrupulosity, but of course it just wasn't, diagnosed at the time, nor was it treated. So I think I find this like very intriguing, because you're absolutely right. Like, we want to be able to engage with spirituality in a way that's helpful, in a way that's honoring your values. And the reality is, like, OCD really gets in the way. And that's the irony of OCD, is you think it's going to make you a better, like, spiritual person. And the reality is OCD actually really gets in the way of you being able to make those choices that do align with your values. So in terms of conquering, I think, and this is relevant to the prior comment, I think that you will have to sort of make your peace with knowing that, like, you may be sinning during ERP. That may be kind of part of how ERP works. And I know that can be really challenging, but that's how I've experienced ERPs like this, are really like getting directly to that, so that you can understand like what the spirit of the religious practices, instead of the specific, like, being so rigid to the religious practice itself.
Mhm.
That was not lightning round. That was so
That
long.
was not, but these questions require some thorough answers, so I love that. Can we get to one more, Ellie?
Yeah.
Let's see. I want like a nice general-ish one so that we hit some
Yeah.
different people's interests. We'll go with this one. When did you realize that you have OCD, and what helped you most in that moment? Maybe not a quick one, but I know Allie and I have different experiences of getting our OCD diagnosis. I was completely shocked when I received it. I did not. So I experienced more of the pure OCD and significantly sexual obsessions and intrusive thoughts, which I had no idea at the time was related to OCD whatsoever. So I was really shocked, and kind of relieved in a way, but also intimidated and kind of weary that this thing that I've been struggling with for years and years, and that really affected my like self-image and created a whole many layers of shame in my life. That could be under OCD, which I thought, like most other people who have no knowledge of OCD, was just about germophobia kind of things or perfectionism. So I was definitely shocked. But what helped me a lot in kind of sitting with that diagnosis was, I think this definitely didn't happen like immediately, but finding the community and other people who struggle with OCD, that was absolutely huge for me, because I both got kind of validated in my experience of this, that I wasn't alone. Um, and I also found so many resources to support myself better and to learn about it. I learned so much more about OCD, and before it was completely limited. And just the knowledge that I've gained from other people and hearing other people's stories, that has really moved me forward in recovery and being able to understand how exactly I am struggling, and kind of self-reflect a lot. Yeah. What about you, Ellie?
Yeah, I mean, I really struggled with it, because I didn't have an official diagnosis. I had actually been diagnosed with an eating disorder, and was trying to complete treatment through that. And unfortunately, it wasn't stabilizing. Like, they were sort of being able to like medically stabilize like my weight, but the treatment itself was not stabilizing. And so I was ritualizing so much, just a lot of rituals. And my like family that were in the same household as me were like, I think you have OCD. And I was like, no, that couldn't possibly be the case, right? Like, I had a very standardized idea of what OCD was, like most people. And I was just like, no, that doesn't fit. That doesn't make sense, because I am preventing bad things from happening. And I am scared of these very random things that nobody else could possibly be afraid of ever. So it was very challenging for me to come to terms with it. I got an official diagnosis from a psychiatrist at the second eating disorder treatment facility that I went to. Um, and she essentially was like, you probably already know this by now, but like you have OCD and you have like really severe OCD. And I, in my head, was like, I did not know that. I really did not know that. But I was like,
No.
oh, right. Okay. And from then on, like I still really struggled to identify with that. And then I went to residential treatment. And as Maya said, like that was one of the most therapeutic experiences, was literally just being in a community of others, hearing that they're experiencing the same thoughts, hearing that they're experiencing similar fears, that, you know, the rituals that I thought were so horrible and stupid and shameful and stigmatizing and really deserved to be secret, other people were engaging in. It was in a community, in a space where we were allowing ourselves to openly acknowledge that and then choose to resist them. So yeah, there was something really, really special about that. And while unfortunately, like that experience isn't always right available for everyone, um, the experience of being in community is for everyone that's here right now, because we're here, you know, we have no CD, we have all of these really great online resources. We're here to sort of welcome you with open arms into our online and virtual, hopefully someday in person community. We have support groups, we have our website, we have all of these things that we're so excited to support you all with and to get to know you and to get to have that sense of community that Maya and I really didn't have before we went into treatment. So that's like a big, like, that's really like our mission at Hard Quirk, is to be able to provide that and to establish that. So yes, I need to go. I'm a little bit late. I just want to say as well. So Hallie Darland, or Holly, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, but I am noticing those comments. Yes. Thank you, Maya. I'm noticing those comments. Like, I hear how distressing it is to think that you may never get back to yourself. Please know that I was absolutely 5,000% convinced that I would never be the same person that I was again, that I was absolutely, without a doubt, done in my life. And that was a lie that OCD really, really wanted me to believe. And that was not true. And I don't think that's true for you either. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you so much. We are so, so happy to have had this opportunity to be able to chat with all of you and get to know you. And NoCD is a fantastic resource. We love working with Jenna Overbaugh. Hopefully many more projects together to come.
Mm-hmm. Hope everyone has a good evening, and definitely check us out on our website and on our social media. You can find us at Hard Quirk, and our website is www.hardquirk.com. Bye, everyone.